and welcome to In Your Business. I'm your host, Marissa Lynn. Today, our guest on the show is Serena Holmes, President and CEO of Tigris Events. Tigris is a 13-time award-winning brand experience agency with its head office located right here in Durham Region. Serena has been named Female Entrepreneur of the Year in 2020 at the Bronze Stevie Award. Serena has a wealth of information, and she's here today to share with us her journey of growing Tigris Events, some of the challenges and successes she's faced, and how a global pandemic has brought the fast-growing company to a standstill. I'd like to give a warm welcome to Serena Holmes. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hello.
Serena, for those who are not familiar with Tigris Events, could you tell us about what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're a brand experience agency. That's kind of the overarching term that we use to describe what we do. But within that, our services are primarily associated with event staffing, event planning, and experiential marketing. We like to say that we create unforgettable experiences that build up brands, businesses, and people, because people are really at the core of everything that we do.
So before Tigris Events, what did you do?
So before Tigris, I was pretty much a student. I literally came directly out of university and straight into Tigris. I graduated from Ryerson in April of 2004, and I ended up getting hired by Tigris as a brand ambassador in June, so just a couple months straight out of school. And within a few months after that, the woman who started Tigris offered me a management position in her parents' home-based office. So we kind of started there with our humble beginnings, and I ended up taking partnership the following spring. And shortly after that, we booked some really large-scale events with some telecommunications companies that really kind of put us on the map. So, didn't really have any corporate or business acumen behind me, but threw myself into operations, and I was kind of really behind the scenes with everything that was happening, while my partner was more of like the person dealing with sales and hiring new talent and things like that.
So what made you decide to be an entrepreneur and put everything into Tigris?
So I kind of joke that I didn't ever decide. I call myself the accidental entrepreneur because I didn't have this idea for the company. I didn't start it. I didn't deal with all the legal paperwork and all those things that kind of go into starting a business. I was trying to be a journalist. That was where my passion was and where my heart was. I actually turned partnership down several times because I was trying to pursue it. I was volunteering, doing videography on the weekend and applying to different places. And I got very, very close to one opportunity, specifically with AM 640. And I ended up going through 3 interviews, and I ultimately lost the opportunity to someone that had a little bit more experience. So I took that as a sign that, there is this other opportunity sitting directly in front of me. I had already done work in that field for 4 to 5 years part-time. So I figured, may as well take this opportunity. I didn't necessarily have to buy in the sense of spending a lot of money. What I ended up doing was assuming half of the debt for all the startup costs. So it was pretty low cost to kind of buy in, I guess you could say. And then we just kind of went from there. So I feel like the entrepreneur life kind of chose me.
So you've been learning along the way for the past.
Yeah, lots of learnings.
So it's been this is your 16-year anniversary that you celebrated at March 31st.
Yeah, that's correct.
And you've grown the company since 2004 from just 1 to 10 full-time employees and a roster of just over 2,200 temporary staff.
That's right.
So what do you think was your most valuable trait that helped you do that and accomplish that?
So I think for us, and I don't know if this is just me personally or, being a business owner, but I've always been very, very quick to get back to people. It's something that's so simple. You would think that it's a given, but even something that we find when we are reaching out to get quotes ourselves, we're doing experiential marketing planning and things like that, you want to work with someone that makes it really, really easy for you and gives you all the information that you need kind of as quickly as possible. I would say we landed probably more than half of our business just by being the first company to respond, getting quotes to people, being very easy and quick to communicate with. We're obviously in the business of events. So at the end of the day, if we have something going on and something happens, a client needs to know that they can always get a hold of someone to troubleshoot an issue or whatever may happen. I actually have asked some clients, what was the difference with us? And they often said, some of the the work while it's being executed is comparable to other agencies, but it's the before and the after. So from the moment of getting a quote out, that can be very, very quick. And then also the wrap up is 2 to 3 days post event, where there are some agencies that could send post reports 2 to 3 months after the fact. So they're not even thinking of that event at that point in time. So I think those are some of the things that have been very, very important, at least to the clients that we continue to work with. Some of them even joke, how many minutes is it going to be until they respond? And something that I can't handle at that exact moment, like I could be driving, I might say, I got your email, it's really important to me, I'm driving right now, but I'll have the quote to you by 2:00 today, just so that they know that it's been received rather than 4 hours going by and they're just waiting on a response.
While building Tigris, I'm sure there's been many challenges along the way. Could you speak about that and just let us know what were some of those challenges that you experienced?
Yeah, for sure. I think the first one goes back to 2007, 2008. I had actually just bought my first house, and a week later, my partner took me out for lunch and told me that she was pregnant. So we were very much like, two halves of the same whole at that point in time. So that was really intimidating, just knowing that she was going to be leaving, since she was very much the face of the company and dealing with most of the sales up until that point. So she ended up going on maternity leave at the beginning of 2008. And when she came back to work at the end of that year, she just decided her heart wasn't in it anymore, and she wanted to leave. So we were basically faced with a crossroads where we could either dissolve the company, we could potentially look at partnering with someone else that could buy her shares and then they own half of Tigris, or I could take the risk and buy her out. You have to keep in mind we were in the middle of a recession at that point in time. So that was also a little bit scary because there's a big price tag attached to a company that's then grown by a certain level. So I took the risk. I think I was comfortable based on how I'd grown it in the year that she was off. And even though there was that cost attached to it, I was comfortable in our reputation and the repeat business that we had going on. I'd say the next biggest thing was probably one of my biggest learning experiences. We had one client in particular that comprised of over 60% of all of our business, and we lost them just in a year. They kind of evaporated. So I was forced to look at the company and think, like, how can we possibly bring in new opportunities? And that was really through our digital marketing. I ended up hiring an SEO company so that we were really easy to find by anyone searching for us. So that could be looking for Toronto event staff, it could be Calgary brand ambassadors, whatever search term someone might be looking for. And then I started investing in tons and tons of digital marketing training myself so that I also understood how to do it. We started collaborating on things where we would take care of some of the content on the website and they would take care of other things that were kind of over and above our skill level. I think the important thing with SEO is that it changes all the time. I don't think unless you're specializing in it, you can necessarily keep up with all the changes that constantly happen. So having a company that you can depend on to make sure that you're doing all the right things, and what worked last year may no longer work this year. So that was a big, big transition. We definitely lost business for a couple of years. And then all of a sudden the business doubled from 2013 to 14 and then just kept on growing from there. There's one point that I reference when I like sell the praises of SEO to different companies that I talk to, but we had maybe 100 quotes back in 2012, and last year we surpassed 700. So every single year since we've been doing it, we've gained 100 plus more leads than the previous year. And then obviously we incrementally book some of those leads. So it's really been transformative, I would say, for our business, specifically because we're not the type of company that you would just walk by and be like, oh, I need a brand ambassador today. Like, it doesn't matter where we're located. That's why we're in Pickering. It's up the street from my house. It saves me on the commuting time going downtown. But at the end of the day, people are searching for our staff in Vancouver and Calgary and Prince Edward Island and wherever they might be across the country. So that's been very, very important for us. And then I think just kind of speeding ahead, I think one of the challenges recently is, like my partner, I ended up deciding to have a family. So I had my first child back in December, and the key employee that I promoted and trained to be my replacement actually resigned 3 months into my maternity leave. So you can imagine, like, from an operations and leadership standpoint, that was really overwhelming. But then COVID happened like 2 weeks later. So everything changed. But at the same time, I think it was just really hard not to take something like that personally. I thought that if nothing, like, she would at least ride out the year. And then if she chose to leave, then maybe she'd go somewhere else at that point in time. So it really caught me by surprise. I think, we had other team members willing to take on some of the responsibilities, but it was one of the challenges that I look at as like, pretty scary at the time.
So knowing that, what are some traits that you would look at for in someone you bring on board?
Yeah, so we definitely look for a lot of different things. I think it depends on when we're considering head office employees rather than brand ambassadors. For the people that are out working in the field, we need to make sure they've got like a really dynamic personality, they're dependable. We actually host group interviews. That's our preference over one-on-one because we want the memorable people. Like at the end of the day, if I can remember them, it's a very, very good thing, or it could also be a very, very bad thing. We've got a lot of funny stories from different interview sessions that we've hosted over the years. When you look at event planning and experiential marketing, it's obviously different from being out there standing on the street or at a trade show. When we are looking at people in the office, we need people that are still very dedicated and dependable, but we need to make sure they've got the right computer skills, that they can be very organized. They have to be able to prioritize everything that they're working on and, kind of look at the big picture of everything that they have going on, because they could get called from a client and there's an issue. And then all of a sudden, everything they plan to do that day goes out the window. So they might have to lean on other team members to help them. So it's very different skill set in the office, but we do like to promote when we can from people on our roster that, like me, have started as BAs and then they can come on board as coordinators and then managers, and, it kind of helps them along their career path.
Okay. And Tigris being, we just have a couple more minutes before we break, but Tigris being a 5-time top choice winner for event staff, what would you attribute to this success?
So like you mentioned in your intro, we've actually won 13 awards since 2014. So among those, we have 5 top choice awards. We're supposed to actually get our 2020 award at the gala this coming Saturday at the CN Tower, but like a lot of other things, it was canceled due to COVID. For us, the Top Choice Award is a consumer-driven award platform. So it's really based on votes from our clients, our community, all of our staff. I think for us, professionalism and respect and dependability is all very, very important. So that keeps people coming back and supporting us year over year for awards like the Top Choice Award.
Well, Serena, we need to hold the conversation here as we take a quick break. Stay with us as there's more to come in your business.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Hi, I'm Jennifer.
And I'm Allison.
We are so excited to be back for another season of The Parenting Show.
Yes, and the topics for this round are things like the infiltration of tech in the family, ways for parents to prevent underage drinking, good old sibling fighting and rivalry, and how to handle those nasty power struggles in the family.
And it's a great way for you to realize that you are not alone. It's all right here on Rogers TV.
Hi there, I'm Mark Grice, the artist, and I hope you'll tune in to an upcoming episode when I start out showing you a picture like that, turn it into a painting like that here on Rogers TV.
Welcome back to In Your Business. Our guest today is Serena Holmes, the CEO and president of Tigris Events. Before the break, Serena was sharing how she grew her company from a team of 1 to 10 full-time employees and a roster of 2,200 temporary staff. It was on this path of steady growth that the company's been faced with the current global pandemic. Serena, it sounds like you've been through a lot. Could you share a little bit more about some of the lessons that you've learned along the way?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned, I came directly out of school and into Tigris. And while there are some really great things with that, we kind of learned a lot of things that we didn't like from other past companies we may have worked with. At the end of the day, there was a lot that I didn't know. So one of the biggest things that I learned was depending on other people for help a little bit. I went about finding a coach back in 2012. And then through that, ended up finding a mentor exchange. And I was partnered up with someone that runs a marketing consultancy. And in our first meeting, we met for 8 hours. He completely deconstructed my entire business based on finances, branding, you name it, like every single component of the business, so that we could develop an action plan. And it had deadlines and deliverables. For example, one of the first things he told me to do was hire a bookkeeper. We were 10 years in and I was still doing all of our own books. And that could mean if I had a busy week ahead, I would literally go into the office on a Saturday just to do payroll. I'm not bookkeeping trained, so it probably took me a lot longer, but we could have 100 to 150 people to pay. So I could be spending anywhere from 4 hours to a couple of days every single week. And that meant I wasn't spending time on sales and things that would grow the business. So in that same year that I hired a bookkeeper, I think through the SEO that we were doing, but also from dedicating my time in other ways, we actually doubled from 2013 to 2014. So I would say if you are starting out in business, don't just try to do it yourself. Definitely try to get experience from people that have been there. I think in addition to that, I mentioned SEO in pretty great detail. Ironically, my partner and I had a meeting in 2004 and we met with someone saying, I want to talk to you about SEO. And if I could literally go back in time, I would change that, because I said, we're fine. You know, we didn't even have a website. If I really, really, truly understood the power of what he was talking about, I would go back and I would take out a loan or a line of credit to invest in that, because imagine we had grown at the pace from that point in time. It would have been a completely different ballgame, and it would have been long before a lot of other companies were doing it. So I definitely kicked myself in the butt for that. In addition, I think learning to delegate among your team is very, very important. Again, I was used to doing everything. So initially it was operations. My partner left. I was doing sales. I was handling things to do with recruiting and payroll and, you know, take out the garbage, you name it. I was doing it. And it was very difficult to start training employees and learning to delegate. One thing that we did early on was, I shouldn't say early on, I should say early on last year, we developed some playbooks that kind of systematize every single position in the company, so that when we hire somebody new, every single thing is laid out, not only what they're doing, but how we expect them to do it. So it's very clear and consistent from employee to employee, so that if someone goes on holidays or maybe they resign on short notice, anyone can literally jump into the work that they've been working on and know exactly what they're looking at. Obviously that came about just when we had different turnover over the years, where it was a little bit of a challenge to figure out what people were doing, because they were kind of doing things their own way in some cases. I think the last thing, just it's really hard not to take things personally and to stress out when it is your business, but it's important to try to compartmentalize everything associated with business and not let it get you too stressed out. As time has passed, it's stressed me out less and less. In the early days, I would say that would have been hard, especially because everything that we're doing depends on other people going out and doing a good job. So if you're hiring 100 people to go out and work an event for the Blue Jays, well, if someone decided to go out partying the night before and doesn't make it to work, it's going to impact everything that you've been working on. So, you know, you've got to have plans in place to troubleshoot accordingly and know that things can happen, but you can't let it ruin your week or ruin your day.
And how would you say that those systems helped to keep consistency with all of the staff that you were sending?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's also cut the learning curve down, because if someone was going through something, once they started doing work, they could go back to their playbook and be like, oh, that was how we do that. Obviously, like, they can ask people on the team, but there's visual references, and it literally step by step will walk them through. That's actually something we've been working on in the last few weeks, is even just going back to all of our playbooks and manuals and just seeing if there's any gaps based on things that we've changed in the last year or two since we developed them.
So let's talk about COVID-19. So you were on this path of steady growth, and no one could have predicted this pandemic that happened pretty suddenly. So can you talk about how COVID-19 has affected your business?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we're all aware that the government's mandated that there's no gatherings of more than 5 people. So considering all of our events are based on large scale festivals, trade shows, promotions, you know, people aren't even leaving their houses. For us, there's really no opportunity to switch to anything virtually. So for us, within the first week of all of the government mandated closures, we had about $150,000 to $200,000 in cancellations of events that were supposed to be taking place throughout the spring. We had close to $1 million in our pipeline of opportunities that we quoted on. And a lot of that now has evaporated because those events have passed or they've been postponed into next year. So I think I recognized very quickly this wasn't going to be something that would pass until maybe the fall if we're lucky, could be even later. So I ended up letting the majority of my team go just to stretch our retained earnings. I'm sitting in our office, which is empty aside from me right now, but we're still responsible for paying rent. We do have some other overhead expenses that we can't necessarily minimize during this time. So I was trying to look at it like how long can I really stretch everything that we have saved right now? And, I was very sad and heartbroken to let the team go, but I think they were understanding. And the way that I positioned it is that we want to have a company to come back to when all of this is done. So it's been pretty crazy. But at the same time, I guess the silver lining for me is that I have a baby at home who turns 6 months next week. So I have a lot more time to focus on her and a lot less emails coming in. So that's for me kind of the little silver lining there.
Congratulations. She's a sweetie.
Thank you.
So Serena, what would you say the future could look like for Tigris?
I think the future really depends on how long the pandemic will run for. Like I said, everyone is hopeful that it's fall. I think it's naive to think that events will go back at full force by the fall. I think there's still a lot moving and changing, and until there's really a treatment for COVID or potentially a vaccine, I don't necessarily see how we can go back to the way that things were. So I think it's just a matter of being patient until they can go back. I do think that when we are actually able to go back, it's going to be busier than ever because all the brands that couldn't do anything during this time are going to want to kind of recapture their market share. It could mean working with new businesses because there are some companies that may have gone under. As it stands, there's one company in particular that we worked with that had to shut their doors. I'm sure there could possibly be more as time passes. So we'll have to kind of see, but I think it's just a matter of being patient. And I try to really structure what we have in the best way possible to kind of weather the storm.
And what lessons can you pull from your 16 years of business that are helping you to persevere at this time?
For sure. I think one would be money management. I was always really keen on overlooking our budget, literally probably a couple times every single week, just to even make simple decisions with. I always wanted to know how much operating costs we had at any point in time. So always evaluating that was kind of important. So when I made the decisions that I did back in March, a lot of it was looking at how long I could stretch what we had for and knowing that there was comfort that, we could be okay until at least summer of next year, meet all of our financial obligations until that time. So I think having a very close attention to your numbers is important. I'm actually surprised to see some companies that have closed because I would almost think like for the size that they are, you think they probably should have been in better shape to get through at least a little bit longer, but you're seeing pretty big names close their doors right now. So for me, I think that's helped a lot. I think the other thing would be patience. This isn't something that we can rush. I think rushing it could put a lot of lives in jeopardy. So I don't think we can necessarily look at, Trinity Bellwoods and all the people that were sitting outside. Like there could be consequences to stuff like that. So I think it's just being patient to know that we're going through something, as a global community, and we just have to know that we're going to get through it. And that could turn into something a little bit different, but you just, have to roll with it the best way you can.
So entrepreneurs, we know they need to be nimble and prepared for surprises, but no one could have predicted this. What has been the biggest takeaway for you from this so far?
I guess expect the unexpected. I think, we've gone through periods of time when we slowed down. For example, when we started doing SEO back in 2012, we knew we had lost that client. In fact, another client came along and replaced them the previous year. So we really knew we'd lost that big client completely. And we started investing in ways to attract new business, but we've never, ever been in a position where we've just gone from to stop. It's like you're driving 100 kilometers an hour and then you just hit the brakes. And I don't think any business has ever been prepared for that. And I think the challenge that most businesses have, when I look at restaurants, especially, restaurants downtown or maybe office towers and stuff like that, they have massive rent costs. The government obviously has created a rent subsidy, but it does sit on the responsibility of the landlords who are potentially going to eat a 25% loss on your rent. So I think that was very poorly structured. But I have done my best to take advantage of any government relief programs that are out there. So there's a loan that's 25% forgivable. So if that means we get $10,000 for free, like, I'm going to take that 40,000 for now, just in case. There's also the wage subsidy program, for example. So for the one employee that I've been able to keep, that's actually been very, very helpful. Obviously, she's not doing a ton right now. She is quoting on some new business, working on marketing, updating proprietary documents and stuff like that. But I probably wouldn't have been able to keep her without a wage subsidy. So I know that that's been tremendously helpful. I think you have to be an ambassador for yourself in a situation like this and just be really, really responsible with your retained earnings. For me, that even means not paying myself for now. And if that means it takes us into next year, I think that's a worthwhile sacrifice in a time like this.
Thank you for that. We have just a few more minutes left, and I wanted to ask you, for anyone who's thinking of starting up a business at this time. I know you started Tigris during 2008 during a recession. This is a little bit different, a different time, but what advice could you offer someone who's thinking of starting up, or maybe they're at the beginning phase of starting a business?
Yeah, for sure. So I obviously kind of bought into the company in the early days, and then I took over operations in 2008. I wasn't necessarily involved in things like registering the business and the bank accounts and all of those things. What I would say is just try to be very clear on what your offerings are. Some of the learnings that I had were trying to pick up the pieces from what the founder had done. She had actually started 4 companies all at the same time, and I bought into 3. It's very, very complicated from a brand perspective, and also costly from the perspective of bank accounts and legal and things like that, to have 3 companies, when really you could be offering that through the same company. The problem is that we had one brand that took off, being Tigris. So people didn't know that we actually did event planning because it was under another name in the beginning. So it took a while to kind of revolutionize to where we are now, so that people understand, yes, we are very much an event staffing agency. That's most of what we do, but we also do X, Y, Z. So I think if you're starting out, you should try to really be very, very clear. If you are able to find a mentor, there are programs out there, like the Toronto chapter of the American Marketing Association has a mentor exchange. You could very much get partnered up with someone in business that can give you some of those tools and advice and feedback to see if it is something that is a viable business. But if it is, give you some of those tips and hints to help you along the way, so that you're not going back and trying to change and fix things down the road. For us, we kind of tried to change things probably 10 years in, and that meant a lot, like new name registrations, websites, and more. So
just going to have to hold you there, Serena. We're
no
just
problem.
Time for this episode of In Your Business. That was very informative information. So thank you, Serena, for sharing your story with us. And no matter where this season of change leads, I trust what you do will continue to be a success. Thank you to our viewers for watching. Next week. And until then, I'm Marissa Lynn.